Good morning and welcome to worship here this Sunday on April 19th at Buffalo United Methodist Church. We're back to a little more casual style, so this will be a shorter service, but I hope that we can get some warm and welcoming exchanges in. I'd like to start by singing a song with you, and it's a very simple song. The words go like this: Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. It's real simple. Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. Christ the Lord is risen, Christ the Lord is risen, Jesu. At least give you a little feel for the right season. We're at Eastertide. This is the Sunday directly after Easter. I don't have a lot of announcements. We're still not planning until the state government opens public buildings. We won't be back in worship at Buffalo, but we can continue to connect online as much as possible. I don't have any specific prayer requests except that we want to continue to remember our healthcare workers and those who are serving us in various ways at the grocery stores, the public workers, all kinds of places. Every time you see somebody, they're putting their health at risk in order to serve you. So I recommend a good thank you at that point. In addition, we have our usual shut-ins, and you want to add Verna Cartano to that. She's staying with her son in somewhere. Anyway, she's staying with her son now so that she has better care. In other words, we want to continue. One of the nice things that has actually come out of this shutdown, the quarantine, is that they have canceled the 2020 Minneapolis General Conference, where they were to take up the issues that they didn't all resolve last year at the General Conference, and that has been delayed. I personally am finding that to be somewhat of a relief, an opportunity to, it feels like a weight lifted off my shoulders, that at least we're hitting a pause button while the United Methodist Church is self-destructing. So that is just fine with me. We could put that off for quite a while. We might discover that we can live together better than we thought we could. So I would like to talk this week about the after Easter time. Would call it maybe the post-Easter, I don't know, post-quarantine Easter, whatever you want to call it. Each of the four Gospels, as you might think, tells a slightly different story. Mark actually has two different endings to the Gospel. Matthew's is probably the one that we're most familiar with, and I want to read a little bit from chapter 28 of Matthew for you. After the Sabbath, as the first light of the new week dawned, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to keep vigil at the tomb. Suddenly the earth reeled and rocked under their feet as God's angel came down from heaven, came right up to where they were standing. He rolled back the stone and then sat on it. Shafts of lightning blazed from him. His garments shimmered snow white. The guards at the tomb were scared to death. They were so frightened they couldn't move. The angel spoke to the women. There is nothing to fear here. I know you're looking for Jesus, the one they nailed to the cross. He is not here. He was raised just as he said. Come and look at the place where he was placed. Now get on your way quickly and tell his disciples he is risen from the dead. He's going on ahead of you to Galilee, and you will see him there. That's the message. The women, deep in wonder and full of joy, lost no time in leaving the tomb. They ran to tell the disciples. And then Jesus met them, stopping them in their tracks. Good morning, he said. They fell to their knees, embraced his feet, and worshipped him. Jesus said, You're holding on to me for dear life. Don't be frightened like that. Go tell my brothers that they are to go to Galilee and that I will meet them there. Here ends the reading. In each of the stories, It talks about how Jesus interacts with the women, in particular Mary Magdalene, not the men. In one of the stories, Peter had been there, saw that it was empty, and ran away, didn't work it out. But each time the women stuck it out. They had responsibilities. They needed to prepare the body for burial now that the Sabbath was over. And in each of them, Jesus spoke, that when they recognized him was when Jesus spoke to them by name. And what I'd like to talk about today is that sometimes we have to listen very carefully if we're going to hear God calling our name today. It's not always visible. It's not always audible. Sometimes we really have to wonder if we're getting the message correctly. But we each have our own resurrection point when God gives us back new life and we can celebrate it and share it with others. Sometimes I think what we hear in God's voice we call common sense or intuition. Maybe we think of it as just a voice in my brain, my conscience talking. Those are all things, but they might be very well voices from God. I had one day when I was coming home from work at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I saw a very elderly lady sitting at the bus stop, and I knew the buses didn't run at 3 a.m. And as I drove by, I heard a voice in my head saying, "Go back. You know she's not supposed to be there, out there." And she turned out to be an Alzheimer's patient who had wandered away from a nursing home. Was it just common sense? I'm not so sure. It was a blessing to her family that I was able to return her safe and sound. I have to believe that it was the right thing to do. But sometimes we hear those little nudges or those words or comments where God is addressing us by name. We have to learn to listen and to listen subtly. Maybe it's something that you read in the paper that really speaks to you about a new service that's coming up because of the quarantine, or an issue that you all of a sudden realize you could have a voice in and make a big difference with. Maybe it's something that you see on the television that reminds you that it's important to stay connected, or reminds you of a problem that someone else is having. Maybe it's just observing that someone seems really tired and discouraged, maybe the person who delivers your groceries, and finding a way to support them. There are hundreds and thousands of ways that God calls our name and asks us to respond. He doesn't want us just to stand there dumbstruck and say, I'm not sure. When someone calls your name, it generally requires a response. And that's what we're looking at this week, is what our response may be. Sometimes a response requires concrete giving. There are plenty of agencies looking for funding during this time, as is the church, as always, looking for ways so that we can reach out. And sometimes it does take money to reach out. Sometimes it's intelligent thought and concern, thinking it through, deciding what exactly it means to be safe at home and not spread the virus. It may be that it's requiring you to add more in prayer. You may be connected in that way, and you'll need to be adding to prayer, intensifying your prayer for the various things. It may be, I don't know, maybe you're meant to write letters and cards to people. Maybe you're meant to be connecting with people by telephoning. I can't give you the right answer, but when you hear the call, be sure you respond. Don't stay with your gaze reflecting back at you, but respond to that call. I'd like to close with a hymn that is really truly an Easter hymn, although we sing it at Christmas time. And it's the first verse of Joy to the World. If you think about the words, they actually are much more Easter-minded. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sings. We hear God's voice coming and we rejoice and respond. Blessings with you on this week. If you would have any prayer requests or if you need anything, please feel free to contact me at 387-3189. 319-389-3187. And I would be glad to bring you whatever you need or whatever. I understand that the new upper rooms have come into the church. If you'd like one, I can certainly drop one off for you. If you would like to have a hymn book, and let me know, I would be glad to bring one to you so that as we worship, you can use some of those resources. But please feel free to contact me. My contact information is also in the newsletter. Now, blessings on you as you go through this week. Amen.